but ball pens are, almost a century older than that.
Ball pens are boomers and gel pens are millennials for all the Gen Z people out there. Hello and welcome to Stationery Test Drive, where every week we check out cool and fun and simple but delightful pieces of stationery. I'm Vishal.
I'm Samir.
This is Minjal, and like Vishal said, we're testing a very cool and fun stationery object, which is the Hauser 4-in-1 4-color ball pen.
With German technology and simply perfect. And I think that's just the review. Okay, goodbye. The Hauser Germany 4-in-1 ball pen. It's made in India, yes, with German technology. And we don't really know much about Hauser themselves. We've covered them before on the show.
Yes, we covered them with one of our favorite cheap fountain pens, the Hauser
Iron X Jazz fountain pen.
Thank you. And yes, it's the same company. It's manufactured in India by Flair Pens. Hauser is supposed to be a German brand since the 1930s, but yes, there isn't a lot of historical information about them.
This is one of those cases of, where a company somewhere in the world picks up a brand that's old and maybe kind of not really in business anymore. Is that?
Yeah, it is likely. I mean, that's what happened to Reynolds in some ways.
I mean, honestly, I don't care who these people are. Their pens are pretty damn great. We had this experience with the Iron X Jazz, and we have this experience now with the Hauser 4-in-1. Now the first time I think I saw a 4-in-1, I must have been 5 or 6 years old, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it still blows my mind. How do those 4 things come out from the same receptacle? And not get jammed
and things used to get jammed. You would almost, as a kid, try to jam everything together, and they've certainly improved the way these maybe newer materials, newer plastics, more flexible things. This is a joy to use. It's on the Rhodia pad, which we just did an episode on, if you have missed that one. So in some ways we're cheating by doing it a really smooth pen on a really smooth paper.
Yeah.
But even on other papers, because on Test Drive what we do is we test out, the three of us. We're artists and calligraphers and designers and illustrators. And this is my test drive with the 4-in-1 Hauser. I keep wanting to say Hauser Iron X Jazz because that's kind of melted into my brain now.
Yes, maybe they should just change all their pens to Hauser Iron X Jazz.
Yeah, it is like jazz. It kind of makes you want to do free-flowing, free-form, jazzy things. And that's kind of what I did. I separated, of course, I had to try each of the pens separately, and I came up with this kind of quartet that's, I guess in some ways you can almost call it animated if I had to be so bold and presumptuous. But
4 Vishals for the price of 1.
Oh, I'm priceless, please. There is no price here. Come on. But yes, that aside, again, this is just so much fun to use, so smooth. Really good for just noodling around, and I didn't do any. I did a very basic pencil thing which I rubbed out later, because really it just helps me to put my proportions down on a page without going too crazy. But yeah, other than that, it was mostly done with this pen. You can see there's just there's a bunch of noodly lines. I don't actually know if, Samir, you'll be able to tell us better if this is any good at precise line work, but it kind of just flows so well that I think this is, even if you get it for nothing else, you should get one of these just to noodle and doodle and do all kinds of things, because you have 4-in-1, and it's got a really nice clip, and that's really cool because the clip itself is the blue. part, which is like solves that issue of having, 4-in-1 but also a clip. And maybe other people have done it before, but no one's done it quite like this.
Yes, I mean that's a bold choice.
Yeah.
To have a clip that's just that ostentatious and unnecessary and gorgeous.
Yeah. But the good thing is it not only fits on like pant pockets and shirt pockets, but also when I'm doing it on, let's see, like I keep this can around. It just sits that way, and it's just, that's a really nice thing for that. But I'm gushing and I'm getting out of control. Samir, you did something with more control.
I did something with more control and less control, but mostly like you, I just had a lot of fun with this.
See, now that is exactly what you need 4-in-1 for.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to do something that was very rendered because I've really enjoyed using ball pens in the past to do fairly rendered portraits.
Of the three of us, you certainly have the most experience in doing that kind of thing. And later on in the episode, maybe we'll show some of those on screen.
Yeah. So I've used mostly a single color ball pen before to do fairly rendered portraits of people. And just having the ability to switch between 4 colors at will. I wanted to try something that let me use the 4 colors best. And this scene kind of came to mind that would cover the black, the blue, the green, and the red. This was just a lot of fun to use.
It seems like it, even though you would think that it's quite tedious with so much line work, so much rendering, so much layering.
Yes, and I think that the thing that I can say about it is that it is the least tedious pen that I have ever used.
Okay.
Because it just kind of, as you said, you can do that sort of noodly stuff very easily. The pen just kind of glides over the surface, and this is a fairly normal, smooth cartridge paper. It's nothing fancy.
Not even as smooth as this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even as fancy as the Rhodia pad. This is something much more generic and simple. So the way it glides over it, the way you're able to kind of shade it in just kind of scribbly bits, the way a ball pen lets you do, which a gel pen doesn't. I mean, that's the whole point why you use a ball pen over a gel pen.
Yeah, but we should talk about ball pens versus gel pens because we've covered both.
We have covered both. We have gone into some of the history of it. There are differences, major differences. But what I found with this pen and trying to do this piece is that I was able to do random scribbly bits, but also fairly structured kind of cross-hatching. And it was smooth at both of them.
And I don't think there doesn't seem to be like a lot of pilling and a lot of those little bobbles of ink, balls of ink that get stuck on the page.
That does happen, but I think that's just inherent to the way ball pens work.
It is, but it's much less pronounced than, let's say, in the Reynolds 045, which we loved, even though it had some of those.
Yes, and I think the difference in the Reynolds and this one is not actually one of quality as far as the ink or anything is concerned. It's that this is a much finer ball pen than I've ever used before.
In order to, I think, fit 4 barrels and 4 ink, 4 ball pens essentially, refills we call them, but they have the entire mechanism. But yeah, they're different from gel pens. How exactly? I mean, I know ball pens have a ball that kind of...
So both ball pens and gel pens have a ball because gel pens happened much later. Gel pens were only invented in 1984, I think. But ball pens are, almost a century older than that.
Ball pens are boomers and gel pens are millennials for all the Gen Z people out there.
I mean, I'm sure most millennials think boomers are a century older than them, but that's another discussion. Ball pens are based on an oil base or a fatty acid base with a dye coloring medium.
Okay.
And gel pens are a pigment coloring medium, which is what makes them more permanent in some cases, but with a water base. So they kind of use very different materials as far as the actual ink is concerned.
Well, Minjal, who is the resident calligrapher of us, has done something extremely controlled and even more measured and even more structured, and here it is in all its glory. Fantastic. And there's 2 of them. Oh my god, this is Let's keep these here. And
That is lovely.
yeah,
I don't know if the density of this shows up on camera.
yes.
So there is a Korean American artist called Il Lee.
Okay.
He does these ballpoint abstractions, is what he calls them. They're basically, huge canvas-sized paintings that he does only with ball pens.
Okay.
Obviously, when you see his work, this would be dense to the point where it is like a dark color,
Right.
on one edge, which then kind of tapers off into lighter shades. I didn't have the patience, obviously, that he would maybe spend, like months on a painting. I spent a couple of hours. But, we've done 35, 36 episodes. I've not had so much fun using any stationery object. Maybe the Reynolds as much as I've had with the Hauser.
Yeah.
I'm just such a big fan of ballpoint pens now to begin with. And Hauser and Reynolds, they're both, I believe, manufactured by the Flair,
By the same company. in
by
India,
Flair
yes.
pens in India. And there is something about, the ink that they use, which makes like this, it's there are 4 pens, like 4 refills inside, and it is still really light.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just like go over it, like, for like hours, and your shoulders not going to hurt.
Yeah.
Your fingers are not going to hurt, and you have so much fun at the end of it.
Yeah, that was always an issue that I had with ball pens, that you were pressing and you were kind of fighting against it to even just get a regular line out of it. And this one is just...
Did you guys have a favorite color? The green was my favorite in the 4.
I do like how minty the green is, I will say that.
It really, also I think because we're just not used to having green in a very sort of seemingly boring looking pen like this.
Yeah.
It just stands out to us all that much more.
So, I mean, I do actually like the black. Black, again, is the kind of thing that we default to. So you think, oh, that's just going to be, something I don't enjoy using. But the line quality I got out of the black is something that I quite enjoyed. It does not look like a ball pen sometimes.
The black felt like a gel pen?
Yeah. You're able to get like line weights out of it in single passes that are unusual.
I think what's happened is that when obviously ball pens were around for decades, and the size of the ball that they started with was fairly large.
Right.
Like the initial ball pens in the early 20th century would have been like a
I think we covered this in the Reynolds episode, and please check that one out. It's one of our early ones, but it's a good one. And I think you said that ball pens basically started off as leather marking tools.
Yes.
And they were large balls with...
yes, exactly. And even the first sort of the hit ball pen that Reynolds made back in the 1940s was actually using surplus military ball bearings as the ball. So it was still fairly large. It was like an or so. Whereas as technology has gotten much more precise, I think these things, I don't know if you can measure these with any normal measuring instrument as far as the thickness of the ball
certainly
is
not
concerned.
the standard ruler that we'll have at home. It's much smaller than possibly the actual tip of it looks like a millimeter wide at most.
Yeah, so I think what's happened is that gel pens came in the 80s, refined a lot of things about the ball pen because of the kind of ink they were using. And maybe some of that technology has now been pushed back into ball pens, which is why we're getting things which are a lot more precise than they used to be.
Do we know how much this costs?
This one we got for the princely sum
30 or
of
40 rupees.
30 rupees.
Yeah, 30 rupees.
Which is, 50 cents
50
maybe?
cents. Less than
30 or 40 cents.
See, because I know that the big pens also are not that cheap. While the big, is fairly common in the States, I believe. But they're not this
Certainly,
economical.
they're not this economical in India. And yes, we have the advantage that this is made in India where we are. You probably have something similar wherever you are in the world. The ball pen is ubiquitous. The 4-in-1 ball pen is in some ways less ubiquitous, but still easy enough to get. We would suggest getting one from wherever you are in the world and trying them out, because clearly, even though we first saw them now decades ago, they have continued to improve. They have continued to be great things.
Like, I think the comment we have on this is very much like we've had on the Hauser INX Jazz,
Yeah.
which is that when we were growing up, these things were more difficult to come across, and the quality at the cheap end was not that great, whether it's a fountain pen or now a ball pen. But things have obviously gotten so much better technology-wise that even the lower, I mean, a 30 rupee pen is still very much the lower end in most of the world.
Yeah. It's a premium pen in India, I must say, because I'm sure you can get a 10 rupee pen,
for students in a normal,
or maybe even a 5 rupee pen by now, I'm sure. Somewhere a really bad 5 rupee pen.
Yes. In fact, we have found, which we have not tested extensively, a 15 rupee fountain pen, which is half the price of this.
Wow. So yeah, we should try that out and see if that's any good. Any closing thoughts other than, did anyone try this for actually writing?
I did write a fair bit with it. I have to say I didn't enjoy the writing experience too much.
Okay. Is it too smooth for writing?
The usual problems you have with ball pens, where there'll be a little ink that is smudging.
Okay.
I had those problems with writing.
Yeah.
But none of those problems when you're noodling or doodling or just...
The other problem I used to have, at least with ballpoint pens, is because of that resistance, they're not really great unless you're writing running hand. And I don't have a good running hand.
They don't do good start and stop kind of writing.
Yeah, because we write block letters mostly.
And I think what's happened is that ball pens were kind of the only choice other than fountain pens as a writing instrument when they started. Gel pens were obviously a huge improvement on the writing front. And now I think people like us appreciate what is technically an older thing, the ball pen, for artistic reasons rather than the writing part. Maybe gel pens are kind of a simpler writing instrument for now.
Yeah, we have not taken or made enough notes to really verify that. We should at some point.
Because the gel pens that we did cover, things like the Rorito, we did use it more as an artistic thing.
Yeah, but I think in some ways that is the ethos of our show, Stationery Test Drive. There are plenty of other shows where people specifically look at pens like this for exam writing or daily office writing, and please check those guys out or those people out. I'm sure they have a better handle on how these will work and the mileage, quite literally, that you can get out of something like this. We have been very satisfied with the mileage of this on our test drive. It's the Hauser 4-in-1 4-color ball pen with German technology. It's not called the INX Jazz. Please watch our episode on the INX Jazz because that was also really fun.
Yes.
And it was also not too expensive. It was 50 rupees rather than 30. But we will get back to scouting out interesting, cheap, fun things like this as we do every week, I hope. And I hope that you will join us at the links on screen, as well as subscribe to the Inky Memo newsletter, where there are other stories of stationery and history, and sometimes both of them together. Until next time, I'm Vishal.
I'm Samir.
This is Minjal.
And 4 is always better than 1.